Alright, so today is Sunday, June 2nd, 2019, and in this video I'm going to be taking you along for the ride of the 2019 Ride for Heart event. This is an annual event that takes place here in the city of Toronto, and it's an opportunity for cyclists to ride their bike on two highways which are normally closed to cyclists. They're for motor vehicles only. So right here I'm down in Exhibition Place. I was just riding past BMO Field, Bank of Montreal Field, and I'll shortly be getting onto a highway called the Gardiner Expressway, which is an elevated roadway, express roadway, which goes through the heart of the city, heart of the downtown. And as you can see, this is a very popular event. There's cyclists all around me as we're going along, and I'll make sure I keep talking through here because there's some loud music playing, which I'm sure is copyrighted in some way, and YouTube probably wouldn't like to listen to that. But yeah, so it's a really fun event. This is my 5th time participating in it. My 2nd time participating in it on a recumbent bike. So yeah, this starts down here in the Exhibition Fairgrounds, which was once the site of it's the annual site of the Canadian National Exhibition, or the CNE, also short formed as the X.
All kinds of different bikes, road bikes, mountain bikes, BMX bikes, tandem bikes.
So it's a big annual fair that happens down this way. Lots of cyclists out, as I said. So it's around a little bit before 6:30 in the morning, which is usually a lot earlier than I normally wake up, but with this event being one that they have to close the highway, they only have the highway closed for a limited amount of time. And if you want to do the longer distances, they require that you show up pretty early for it. So I decided I want to do the 75 kilometer route, which is what I've done all the 4 other times that I've done this event. So yeah, I decided that if you want to do the 75K event, you got to get here you got to start between 6 and 6:30 a.m. So I was up this morning at 4:45 to get down here. All right, and here we are. We're now on the Gardiner Expressway. This is a portion of the road which is not elevated. And let me first apologize if there's water on the camera lens. I do apologize. I will do my best to stop and clean it off whenever I can, but unfortunately it rained overnight, and actually it was raining on my ride from home down to Exhibition Place. It just really has just stopped raining right now. It's not expected to rain anymore during my ride today, which is great, but with wet roads and my camera being mounted fairly low to the ground, the potential of splatter from the road getting on it is fairly high. So as I said, I do apologize. I'll do my best to stop and clean it off periodically throughout the ride. So coming into view up ahead, of course, you can see the iconic CN Tower running up there, flashing over on the right side, just a little bit to the right of the road. The CN Tower is actually on the left side of Exhibition Place, or sorry, on the left side of the road that we're on, the Gardiner Expressway. Let me just pull up my secondary camera here and I can show you, looking over Exhibition Place, where we started today. So that right there is BMO Field, which is where a couple Toronto sports teams play. One of them is the Toronto FC, or Toronto Football Club, and the other one is the Toronto Argos, Toronto's Canadian Football League CFL team. And that's the rest of Exhibition Place. It's quite a large area. This building here with the big green domes on the top, that's Coca-Cola Coliseum, formerly known as Ricoh Coliseum. That's, I believe, where the Toronto Marlies play, which is the farm team to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I believe this is the 32nd anniversary of this event. And just a couple of years ago, they opened it up from being an event that was exclusively available to cyclists to now it's an event that you can come walk. You can come here as a walker. Now I should mention, this is not a timed event whatsoever. It's not a race. So everyone wears a bib, they call it, just a little number. Well, it's not even a number plate, it's just a piece of, looks like paper, but it's synthetic material that you pin onto your shirt to say that you've paid to be a participant in this event. And you need that to get onto the course, but once you're onto the course, nothing's being timed, it's all just for fun. So even though I'm registered for 75K, there's no way of them to actually, well, they don't care whether I actually do 75K or not. I could do 25K. But the same goes for the walk. They start much later than the cyclist, and I think they sort of separate that part of the road for them as well. Like they don't want mixing of cars and bikes together on this speedy highway. Because even though it's not not officially a race, there are a lot of people in the city of Toronto that like to ride road bikes, and they like to ride them really fast. And we don't have a lot of, really fast roadways without traffic lights that they can really ride them on. So this is their opportunity to really go fast. So you'll see some very serious road cyclists at this event. So yeah, we're just sort of going through the main downtown core of Toronto right now. And as you can see, there's lots of buildings which are built right up next beside this elevated expressway. And I guess I can show you here, if I just sort of right over to the side, that we are elevated, above ground level. If I just point you over here, you can see we're up there now, even though we just started at ground level. And there's actually another road underneath us for most of the way. That other road is Lakeshore Boulevard. And I'll also apologize for any wind noise that you hear with my microphone. Not particularly windy today, but there seems to be a couple of gusts of wind that I've been feeling. So yeah, this is actually probably the latest I've ever started this event. I normally here right at 6 or maybe 6:05 or something when I start. But this year with the rain, and the forecast showing that the rain was going to stop right around 6, I wanted to, wait until as much of that rain had passed as possible, so I didn't leave particularly early, especially knowing that I had until 6:30 to begin. So that white dome with the big curved roof there below the CN Tower, that white building or white structure, that's the Rogers Center, or better known as the Sky Dome, which is what it was originally called when it was first built. That's where the Toronto Blue Jays play their games. It's where the Toronto Argos used to play their games. And before that, when it was first opened, before the another building we'll be seeing shortly was built, it's where the Raptors actually played their very first couple seasons. They're at the giant Sky Dome. The name from Sky Dome to Rogers Center changed sometime in the early 2000s, but a lot of people like myself still prefer to call it by its original name. It was one of the very earliest, at least in North America, stadiums to have a roof that opened. And that's why it was called the Sky Dome, or that's one of the reasons why that name was picked. This round sort of building here, just beyond the highway, that's the Roundhouse. It's an old building that was used for switching trains. It's a big, roundhouse for trains. Looks like there's some mechanical problems already. Seeing a bike with, I think, looks like both of the tires removed. So yeah, as I was mentioning, sort of up ahead on the left, there's a sign which says Scotiabank Arena, and that's where the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Toronto Raptors currently play. For many years, I guess for the first, 20 years that building existed, it was called the Air Canada Centre, and I guess they renamed it when the naming rights ran out on it, so now it's called Scotiabank Arena. And a very exciting time right now because the Toronto Raptors are in the NBA Finals, and they won their first game in the finals. I think they have their second game tonight, Sunday night. Now I'm posting these videos, or I'm going to be posting this video probably a ways after the NBA Finals is finished, because I've got a list of other videos which will need to be posted before then, but today is June 2nd, so anything that I mention today will be coming from the perspective of a person on June 2nd. Alright, so now we're kind of getting to the edge of the main downtown core. You can see there's not really too many more tall buildings around me. And what's my distance so far? So far I've gone 6.2 kilometers. My average speed is 23.7. Not particularly fast, but as I said, today's not a race, and especially with me holding a camera in one hand and narrating while I'm riding, speed is not exactly my priority. Now in previous years when I've come here, I've, really, I guess getting here at 6 and seeing all the other cyclists, moving so quickly, I really did feel motivated to ride really quickly myself. So last year when I came here, for example, riding my Linear Recumbent Bike, the bike that I had, well, that bike shares many of the same components as many of the same actual parts as what I'm riding right now. I recorded my own time and speed as I averaged 25.5 kilometers per hour, which I know I'm not going to get this year because, again, my focus this year is on video making. But that was about as fast as I could comfortably do on this bike at the time. And that seemed really fast to me because I had just gotten back from a bike trip, May of 2018, riding around southwestern Ontario. And on that trip, I was getting, my daily average is maybe, 18 kilometers per hour. Now, the big difference is that when I'm on that trip, I'm carrying about 50 pounds of cargo. And anytime I've got to climb a hill, I can really feel all that cargo. Whereas this kind of event, I've got no cargo, well, virtually no cargo, a couple tools and, my jacket and stuff like that, but so yeah, definitely getting towards the edge of the downtown core now. So I'll just point a few things out. So looking over this way, you can see there's that big ship over there, a couple other elevators and stuff. That area over there is known as the Portlands. Sort of an area of the harbor which sticks out from the rest of the land. Beyond there, sort of over behind where that crane is, the land that you see on the other side of the water, that's Toronto Island. Or the Toronto Islands, which is a place that I like to go. I go to Toronto Islands about once a month because it is really one of the nicest parks in the city. And currently it's not quite its usual self. It's a little bit underwater right now. Quite flooded, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The water levels in Lake Ontario are higher than, well, apparently than ever recorded. So a community which is built, just a little bit above water level is certainly feeling the effects. So this is where the Don Valley Parkway, this is where the Gardiner Expressway branches off in two directions. If we were to go to straight, which is not available today, that would be Lakeshore Boulevard. And if we go to the left here, that'll be the Don Valley Parkway. But I'm just going to stop quickly and clean off my camera lens here. All right, so passing the 8 kilometer mark, although my odometer actually says 8.47. And we're heading down a ramp down to the Don Valley Parkway, which is another city-owned highway, which is normally not available to bikes. This road runs along beside the Don Valley River. And yeah, it's quite a nice hill that I get to come down here. But we will have a fair bit of climbing up ahead as we continue our way along the path of the river. Because the city slopes away from the lake. So we got Lake Ontario in Toronto down at the southern end. And if you go away from the lake in any direction, you're climbing uphill. So just about everywhere in Toronto, if you're heading north, you're pretty much going to be climbing up a hill unless you're going down into some kind of a valley, but then eventually you have to climb back up the other side of that valley. So and here's a big group of road cyclists. all riding together. You definitely see those kinds of groups here. A lot of cycling clubs that join this event together. I should mention the Ride for Heart is a fundraising event. It's run by an organization called the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Canada. And they raise money for, I guess, research. Well, you can go on their website if you really want to know more about them and what they do, but their focus is on preventing heart attacks and heart disease. I'm sure they do many things, and if I tried to summarize, I'm sure I'd miss some key important things that they do. So here's the first sort of rest stop, or not much of a rest stop, it's a bathroom stop. All those blue porta potties on our right back there. And we're just going over Dundas, or under Dundas Avenue East, out to this bridges. This Don Valley is, quite a significant valley that, to get across, there are bridges which cross it. In the downtown core, there's quite a few bridges, but once you get past Gerard Avenue or Gerard Street, I think it's Gerard Street, there's only only a couple bridges after that, and they're much further apart. And that's because, of course, the valley gets, deeper, I guess, or the land on either side gets higher. So it's a much wider gap that needs to be spanned. More minor technical problems with bikes, looks like. I think that back there actually was Gerard Street. And this, I guess, here is the last bridge before Bloor. This is just a pedestrian bridge, though. It connects together Riverdale Park. There's a Riverdale Park East and a Riverdale Park West. And that green bridge above us, it connects the two of them together. Down in the valley, there's also a nice network of trail systems as well. I've actually made a video covering riding down the Don Valley Trail. That was back when I lived up in the Yonge and Eglinton area. So I started from around there. Well, from my closest access point to the Don Trail, which is near Sunnybrook Hospital, or Sunnybrook Park is actually where it started. And from there I could ride all the way down to the lake following that trail, and as I said, there is a video you can watch to see that. If this is your first time watching a cjhoyle video, I make a variety of different videos. A lot of them, all of my videos really focus in around my hobbies and interests, of which one of them is cycling. So I make a lot of videos about cycling. In a video like this, I've got a camera mounted on the front of my bike. And as I'm riding along here, I have an earpiece microphone in my ear. And I try to narrate things as I'm seeing them and doing them. And the idea of a video like this is to give you the perspective that you're out here on this early Sunday morning before 7 a.m. riding with me. I do make lots of other videos though. I'll tell you more about those in a moment, but first I'll point out this large arch bridge above us, or we're about to go underneath it. That is the Prince Edward Viaduct, or the Bloor Viaduct Bridge, which is the bridge which spans the Don Valley. Bloor Street is one of the main east-west streets. And I apologize, it's starting to rain again, so if there's water on the camera lens, I do apologize, and I'll do my best to clear it off when I can. But yeah, Bloor Street is a major east-west street which connects along that bridge with Danforth Avenue, which is the East End equivalent of Bloor. And there's a subway which runs underneath that roadway. In fact, that subway uses that same bridge, and sort of in the undercarriage of that bridge, that's where the subway travels. So if we were to have ridden underneath it while the subway train was going, and maybe we'll see it on the way back, but if we were to see that, you'd see a little subway car, well, a long subway car passing underneath. My plan for this video is to record the first 30 kilometers or so of the ride, which is basically this roadway, or this course that I'm riding. The upper section of it, to get 75 kilometers, there's an extra loop that you do. So I'm not going to subject my viewers to watching that same loop twice in the same video. So I'll ride until the start of that loop. Well, then I'll go do that loop the second time myself. And then I'm hoping to turn the camera back on after that and record the part of the course that you're not going to see, which is me heading back.
Everybody say raptor!
They go to a lot of effort at these events to get volunteers out to cheer on the participants, to give them, to energize them, I guess, to feel like they're getting closer to their deadline. But I have to say, well, trying to make a video or trying to narrate with people shouting at you with megaphones, it makes it a little bit more difficult to focus on what I'm talking about. So yeah, over there on the right, if I had turned, that would have been the 25 kilometer course. So basically, if I was doing 25K, I'm approximately at the halfway point. But I'm doing 75K, so I've only traveled, 12 and a half kilometers so far. So I've still got quite a ways to go. But the second video that I was mentioning there, which will follow this video, part 2, will start from around that area there and show you what it's like riding back into Toronto from the other direction. And the advantage of that video is hopefully by then the sun will be out and the rain will have stopped. I'm just going to stop here and clean off my lens once again. Yeah, I'd say that lens cleaning was definitely required. That lens was pretty wet, so I do apologize. With the setup of the camera on this particular bike, being able to reach the lens is a little bit difficult while I'm actually riding, so, and especially with all these other cyclists around, it's a lot safer to just pull over to do it.
Comfier than my time anyway.
Thanks. So up here you can see there's another recumbent cyclist, recumbent cyclist. It's a trike, not a bike, but a person riding a trike I guess would still be a cyclist because they're not a bicyclist, but they're a tricyclist. So as I said, I make biking videos, and so these narrated videos are one sort of series that I do. I've done videos, riding all over my city. Like I mentioned, the Don Valley Trail was one that I've done before. But I also used to film my daily commute to and from work. Not every day, but about once a month I used to do that. And this summer I'm hoping to film more other parts of Toronto that I've never shown before in that format. But in addition to these narrated cycling videos, I also make other types of biking videos. I make bike travel videos. I mentioned earlier in the video that last May, I did a tour of southwestern Ontario. That in itself is a video series. There are 9 episodes in that, 9 days of the trip. And in those videos, they're very different than these because they're very short and condensed. And the things that I'm saying are not just sort of what comes off the top of my head. They're like kind of scripted a little bit. I film those as little clips and then I get back to my computer and I edit them all together and record a voiceover. So the reason that this video is coming out a lot later than the day that I'm recording it, June 2nd, is because of one of those tours. A week ago today, I just got back from another 9-day tour, this time of central and eastern Ontario. And as I'm recording this, I've now posted one of those 9 videos, and I've still got 8 more to work on. But when you see this video, I will have already posted all 9 videos. So that's sort of a better look at the Don Valley over there on the left. It's quite a green area, despite having this big highway that passes along beside it. It is a really nice place to spend time. Except for the fact that you just will hear constant zoom, 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 all the cars going by. Cars are never out of earshot here in this city, really. But on a morning like today, when it just bikes on the Don Valley, sure it would be a really nice place to be. So that exit there on the right, that goes to Don Mills Road. Don Mills Road is a north-south road, which goes somewhat parallel to this highway that we're on. That's also the exit you would get off of if you wanted to go to the Ontario Science Centre, which is built. It's a building that backs onto the Don Valley. So here's the first sort of official rest station. So if I needed to use a restroom there, I would stop, or if I needed more water or snacks, but I think I'm good for now. So I'm going to keep riding. Maybe I'll stop there on my second loop of this part of the course. But for now, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm going to proceed. Now here you can see a group of cyclists coming in the other direction, and I'm wondering if they're the very first I don't remember seeing any others coming in the other direction already. But that big group might have been the very first to start this morning, or not just the first to start, but the fastest. Over here you can see some interesting sculptures. And people that I know that live in Toronto, everyone has a different name for these. They kind of look like elephants. And they kind of look like, some people say that they look like teeth too. Sorry, those people were talking to me. Now, see there's two buildings up there that are, can't remember the name of them, but they're over in, I think, Thorncliffe Park. And they're some of the tallest buildings in the city. Although they've been around since, I think, the 1960s. So they're kind of unique. They're certainly the tallest thing in their neck of the woods. Oh, I missed it. There was a velomobile coming the other direction, coming down the Don that I didn't record. A velomobile is a recumbent tricycle, like the one that I saw earlier in the ride, but it has a fiberglass shell around it, which makes it very aerodynamic. Well, given that they're coming down the hill and probably going faster than me, there's a good chance that we'll see the velomobile go in the other direction. So yeah, like I mentioned, I've got this other video series which you will have already seen, or will at least already be available at this point. That was a really fun trip. I started it the weekend of the May 24th long weekend, or we call it the May 24th long weekend, but it was actually long before the 24th of May this year. The Victoria Day long weekend. I left on the 18th of May 2019, and I rode Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then I got back on the following Sunday. So 9 days out exploring central and eastern Ontario. I started in Oshawa, which is actually the city where I was born, and grew up in the community right next to Oshawa called Whitby. And from Oshawa I rode east, and I stopped the first night in Cobourg. Then I continued east, stopped in Sandbanks Provincial Park, which is on Prince Edward County. After a nice night there on the sandy beach, I got back on my bike and continued riding east to the city of Kingston. Although I didn't actually stay in the city of Kingston, I stayed on an island which is off the shoreline of Kingston. That island is called Wolfe Island. And after a night at Wolfe Island, I continued east and also headed a little bit north. And I stayed at a provincial park called Charleston Lake Provincial Park. Then from there, my eastern directionality ended, and I started going mostly north and a little bit west through the windy, twisty roads of the Canadian Shield, which took me to Charlotte Lake Provincial Park, which is just off of Highway 7, or the Trans-Canada Highway. After a night in Charlotte Lake, I rode south and further west to the town of Napanee for a night. From Napanee, I rode again a little bit north, but mostly west to a provincial park called Ferris, which is just outside the community of Campbellford, Ontario. And then from there, I rode through the city of, well, I rode again further, mostly west again, passing through the city of Peterborough, and stopped at Emily Provincial Park, which is outside of a small community called Omimi. And then from there, my final day of the trip, I rode west and a little bit south, passing through the community of Port Perry, and ultimately ending my trip in Aurora, where I could catch a GO train back to the city of Toronto. So that was a lot of fun. It was the exact same week this year as the week I did it last year, as I did my Southwestern trip last year. But this year it was a lot colder. You know, during the day times, I think there was one day when it went up to 20 degrees Celsius, but for the most part it was in the teens for pretty much throughout the day. And in the evenings, I think it went down, you know, to the single digits in terms of degrees Celsius. So I think it might have gone down as low as 6 degrees Celsius. So I definitely had to wear a lot of layers at nighttime to make sure I stayed warm. That sign there said we're going to be crossing Eglinton Avenue. And the next two exits are for Lawrence Avenue, and this route actually turns around at Lawrence. So once we get there, you'll be seeing me riding in the other direction, downhill. Although before then, we actually have a little bit of downhill as well, because I think we're branching off from where the actual Don River is. Because the river has to always flow downhill from towards the lake. So I think the river kind of went over to our... Well, actually, I think it branches off to two places. It merges. There's the Don Valley West, and then there's the Don Valley East. So the time now is just after 7 a.m., 7:08. And my distance is 18.8 kilometers. And my average speed is 24.5, so really not that much different than last year. At least so far. I may start to tire. All right, so yeah, here's our downhill. Just get a drink of water here. Hey. This is where you really got to be careful, because I've seen people fall here before, and it can be really dangerous with so many people riding quickly. One person falls and the people behind them trying to avoid them, and you just got to be really careful. Alright, so no falls, thankfully. Here's another little rest station, but again, I'm going to skip this one, I think. I'm feeling just fine. I got plenty of water, given that it's not really that hot. I'm not really drinking it very fast. So I think I'll be just fine as I am. For now, at least. I've got 2 water bottles with me, which on a hot summer day for 75k is definitely not enough. But along the way at those rest stations, they always have water that you can use to refill your bottles. So really you only need to bring 1 water bottle, because you can do that, but if you're not going to be stopping, or if you prefer not to have to stop all the time, then 2 water bottles is a good idea. The temperature this morning is about, I'm going to say about 16 degrees Celsius. That's what it was when I left home, and I don't think it's really warmed up too much since then. And yeah, we've got a fair bit of a climb here to tackle. My average speed was up to 24.9 after that descent. And I'm sure it's going to be reduced here. I definitely have to say I feel in a lot better shape after that trip I did last week. You know, when you're spending 6 hours at least on the road every day, riding and climbing hills and carrying cargo, your body sort of gets adjusted to it, and a little 75-kilometer jaunt like this becomes pretty reasonable. On those first couple days of my ride, though, I was certainly feeling like I had to work pretty hard each day, and my muscles just, you know, were not used to traveling those kinds of distances. And on the first couple days I was stopping every, 10-15 kilometers just to stretch my muscles because they were getting sore. But after 2 or 3 days, that went away, and I was still stretching, but it was a lot less, and the stretching was more, preventative than it was reactive. I'm going to pull over here and make sure that my camera is still cleaned off okay. Yeah, there's a couple raindrops on there. It hasn't really been raining, but the spray from the road does eventually make its way up here. Now you'll notice as we're riding along, there are people wearing, a lot of people wearing rain jackets. But normally at this event, you'll see lots of people wearing red t-shirts or red cycling jerseys. And some of it has to do with the amount that people fundraised for this event. But there's also a big component of this ride is the corporate challenge. Or sorry, the big component of this event is the corporate challenge, which is that a lot of employers in Toronto will participate in this event, and they'll, sponsor or pay for their employees their entry fee to participate in here, and the employees just need to, fundraise the amount. Well, fundraise as much as they can, but there's a minimum amount that you have to fundraise to be a participant as a member of the team. And that's actually how I got into doing this event. I'm here today as part of my company's, my employer's corporate team. And I have one of those, so everyone that participates in the corporate challenge gets a red t-shirt, and every year they change them a bit, so they're always a little bit different. And I have one of those shirts, but I decided today not to wear it for a couple of reasons. The main one though is because riding this recumbent, I don't have very many easy places to put things. You can see some of these other cyclists, they have things stored in their, sort of in their back pocket, sort of behind in their lower back area. Well, I don't have that. That spot doesn't exist for me because my back is being pressed up against a recumbent seat, and my seat pocket has my water bottles in it. So I wear a t-shirt or a breathable, fabric short sleeve shirt that has a front pocket in it, and that allows me to keep my phone and my my handheld camera. So if I were to wear the red t-shirt, I wouldn't have that. That's one reason. Another reason is because t-shirts don't breathe very well, and they get sweaty really easily, and they stay wet. And especially with it being a rainy day today, had I worn that t-shirt, it probably would have gotten wet in the ride from home to the event, and it still probably would be wet. Or these breathable shirts, they don't absorb as much water, and they dry pretty quickly. So as you can see, we're now off the Don Valley Parkway. We're on one of the exits, and we'll soon be looping around and heading back in the other direction. So this here is York Mills Road. So on a normal day, this is where cars would get off the Don Valley Parkway and go to destinations along York Mills Road. But given that today's the event day, part of this lane here is barricaded off, and we'll be looping back on and getting onto the on-ramp for York Mills, or from York Mills onto Don Valley Parkway. And we'll be heading in the south direction, which will be mostly downhill, but there will be that part where I had to go down a hill that I'll have to climb up this time. Alright, and if I had taken that first left there, that would have taken me to the rest station, but I've decided rest is for the weak. No, I've decided that I don't need a rest once again, because we're going to be mostly going downhill, and I'll take a rest after I have completed my first loop, the 30 kilometer mark approximately. Right now we've gone 23.1, and after that climb, my average speed is down to 24.2. I've slowed down a fair bit, as I predicted. But now that we've got a nice downhill, that will probably change. Oops. Now the rain that's happening today, that's a bit of a theme of this event, unfortunately. It's this one weekend of the year that they do this, and it's planned months and months in advance. And there's a really bad record for it raining on this day. The very first time I did this was in 2013, and I remember it, riding, seeing the forecast, thinking, oh no, it's gonna rain, and starting the ride, it was fine. And then after right around when I got to the Bloor Bridge, when I was going north, it started to pour, and it just poured and poured and poured and poured, and it rained for, as I recall, most of the event. Most of the rest of that time was rain. Actually, I think at the very end it had stopped, but I was under the rain for, a good 2 hours at least. And around this time of year, it's not particularly warm, so it was cold and it was rainy. And I was wearing my corporate challenge t-shirt, of course, and I got soaking wet, and it was wearing that wet t-shirt the entire time. So as I've learned my lesson from that. The second year I did it, it was beautifully sunny. I did it with my dad. He joined our team from the company, and we were riding together, and that was a lot of fun. We both did the 75K loop together. And yeah, it was absolutely beautiful weather. Then, in the following year, 2015, I did it again, and it was cold and it was rainy. It was like really cold that weekend. And I remember I was shivering, and at the end I was walking around. At the end there's like a breakfast or a meal you can eat if you're part of the corporate challenge. And I was walking around in wet socks and a wet t-shirt, and I was shivering, and that was not a fun year. So a little bit of rain at the beginning of the ride. Not a huge surprise, but also really not that bad either. Can't complain. They also put people over the bridges as well to cheer us on. Or maybe they're there on their own. Probably not volunteers. Just people, private citizens. Now my average is back up to 25.0. I think that group there that you may have not seen, but on the left, I think that big group that I passed in the other direction, who I had guessed was probably the the very first people to come around, they passed me in the other direction now, so I guess they're getting close to being finished their second lap. I can't remember the number of people that participate, but it's certainly in the thousands, and it might be, in the 5 digits, like more than 10,000. I think when they added the walking component to the race or to the event, I think that really would have increased the level of participation, the number of participants. So lots of people participate, and they raise all kinds of money for Heart and Stroke Foundation. So this exit here is for Winford Drive, coming up on our right. And I guess Eglinton Avenue is the next one. And now this is interesting. This lane right here in the middle, this is, during normal travel time, this is a lane which is restricted just to GO Transit vehicles and Toronto Transit Commission vehicles. but public transit only, basically. Can use this inner lane. And that's because this is a very busy, very congested, clogged highway during rush hour. If you live in the suburbs and you want to drive your car downtown, at least if you lived on the east end or east of Toronto, this is the route that you'd probably take. And pretty much everyone else wants to take it too. So the Don Valley Parkway is quite a busy, congested roadway. Or it's known to be, at least. I have very little first-hand experience with that, given that I live in the city and I'm car-free, so I don't drive very often. The Don Valley Parkway is often nicknamed, or I've heard it nicknamed, the Don Valley parking lot, because during rush hour it's, bumper to bumper traffic and not a whole lot of movement. So our hill climbing there is complete, and I think it's mostly downhill here for the rest of this lap, at least. In the remainder of the video, we're now at almost 27 kilometers, so getting close to the end here. But as I mentioned, this will pick up in a part 2, I'm hoping, at least, where after I've done a second lap, I'll show you the route from the end of the lap to back to the start line. All right, I'm just going to pull over here once more and make sure that you can still see out the front of the lens here. Yeah, so I think the rain has pretty much stopped, and unless I go through any big puddles, I think that lens will be good for the rest of this video. So my average speed is back up to 24.9, almost 25. You can see the maximum speed on this road is 90 kilometers per hour. Well, I'm not going to ride quite that fast. I'm not sure what my top speed on this bike is, but it's certainly not that. And it certainly takes a pretty big hill for me to get anywhere close to that. I actually changed the gearing on this bike. Leading up to my last trip, I wanted to be able to gear down lower for climbing hills. So I put a smaller crank set with smaller chain rings on my bike, which increased my lower range by about 20%. So I could gear down 20% lower than I could before, which was much appreciated when you're carrying 50 pounds of cargo up a giant steep hill and you're riding your bike all day long. I appreciated being able to gear right down and go slow. But doing that also meant I lost some range on the top end. Now, it wasn't quite as much that I lost on the top end. I went from a 48 tooth sprocket to a 42, so that's not a huge drop in percentage, where the front one was going from 28 to 22. So the same number of teeth difference, but percentage-wise, a different ratio amount. But the thing is, I very rarely use my top speeds on this bike. Like right now, I'm not even quite in my top speed. I'm two below my top right now, and I'm going down a hill. And I've been in my top speed very, very rarely, even on my ride today. So I'm really not missing those top gears. But if I was trying to reach that 90 kilometers per hour maximum, I certainly would be reaching for those top speeds. Here's a big group of cyclists coming past me. You can hear all the road tires in unison. And they're all, riding together. I'm sure because they're, many of them are in a group that know each other and everything, but they get the advantage of riding together like that because they can draft each other, meaning by following behind someone else, the person ahead of you is breaking the wind for you, so you get the aerodynamic advantage of just sort of coasting behind them. Well, not coasting, but they're breaking the wind for you. I remember when I was doing this event last year, right near the very end, probably the last 10 kilometers or so, there was a road cyclist who came up behind me and he was drafting me. And he just stayed right on my tail for like 10 kilometers. And we had a little bit of a conversation, but it was a little bit weird. Because he just chose me as the guy he wanted to follow, and I said, okay, well, whatever. I mean, it's just a little bit unique because I was riding a recumbent and I wasn't riding particularly fast. As I said, 25.5 kilometers per hour. That other group of cyclists just whizzed past me right now. They're obviously going closer to 30, if not higher. Although right now my speed is 25.5. So as I said, it's grown a little bit again since I had it down. So the next exit is for Bayview Avenue and Bloor Avenue, and that is where the turnaround is. So this video will be coming to an end quite shortly. My odometer says 30.1 kilometers so far. So we're right near that first loop ending. And for doing 75K, well, I'm getting close to my halfway point as well. There's a better shot at the green space that we have here in the Don Valley. So the Don Valley Trail passes somewhere through there. It sort of meanders its way back and forth from between the two different sides of the river. And since I didn't make a proper starting to this video, here's what I look like as I'm riding along, riding my recumbent bike with my orange shirt and front pocket and earpiece microphone. It's making the audio in this video possible. This bridge that we're just about to go under is I believe it's called the Millwood Bridge. It connects together East York with, well, I guess it's still East York, but it's a big bridge that crosses across the Don Valley. It's Millwood Road, I guess the sign says, so. But it connects, into what I would consider, the old city of East York, the Danforth area, and goes across to, I guess, Leaside would be where the bridge comes out on the other end. Today I'm riding I'm testing out a modification I did to my seat for this recumbent bike. You'll have seen, if you watched my last video series of the bike trip on day 8, the seat I was using, one of the welds cracked and failed, and I ended up holding it together with the C-clamp for the rest of the trip, but that obviously wasn't the permanent solution. And the idea of getting that re-welded or, you know, somehow repaired certainly did come to mind. But believe it or not, that's actually the second linear seat that's failed like that, or in a similar way. That seat that I was using on that trip is actually the seat from my older 1992 Iowa Linear Recumbent. And the reason I was using my older seat was because my newer one from my 2005 Linear, it had a crack in the seat in that same area, and it cracked last fall in October, I believe. Either September or October. I guess it was September. And I ended up taking it someplace to get it welded. You know, and it's hard to find aluminum welders, unfortunately. And they're not cheap either. I mean, when I say welder, I mean a person who can weld. I don't mean an actual TIG welder equipment. I'm certainly not qualified to weld aluminum myself. So it's tricky to find someone that's willing to do a small little job like that. But anyways, I did, and they repaired it for me. And when I was getting ready to leave for my trip, so that was back in November that I got it repaired, and I was getting ready to leave for my trip in early May. Before, in early May, I was checking out my bike, making sure everything was fine, and I saw that repair that had been done was already starting to fail. There was already cracks that were starting to form, and I just knew that if I subjected it to, 9 days of riding constantly, that there was a good chance that it would fail. So I said, okay, well, let's use my old seat, which has never had any problems, and it had no problems until day 8 when it cracked. So now I had two. Well, I mean, I held it together with C-clamps, so that got me home. But, now I've had two seats that have failed, and one seat that's failed twice. So getting it re-welded was sort of like, well, is this the sort of thing that I have to get re-welded every 6 months? Like, I want a permanent solution. So I tried doing something myself that would not rely on welding. It's actually created the bottom of the seat out of a woven together mesh of rope. And trying that out, I only got that completed last night, so this is really my maiden voyage riding like that, and thankfully it's doing all right so far. All right, so as you can see, we're getting off of the highway again here. This is the exit for Bayview and Bloor, and we're gonna be subjected to some megaphone shouting at us, which will be distracting here for a moment. Now you can see after this exit, there's people getting back on, and I will be getting back on shortly. But basically it forks off. So if you're doing the 50 kilometer loop, then you fork off to the right and you head back to the starting point. But if you're doing the 75K, then you loop around and you go back up to Lawrence Avenue, where I went earlier. So I'll be doing that second loop. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed joining me on this video. If you made it all the way to the end, I'd love to hear what you thought of this video, so please leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.